Welcome to Cheese in Depth. I'm Michael Landis, and today I have Padgett Arnold, and we are going to be talking about what we did last year, talking about cheeses and the farm, but she's going to catch us up on what happened in the year and what's new and all the fun things that are going on the farm. So I'm going to turn it over to Padgett.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's good to see you always, and good to have an opportunity to kind of catch up with you. And a lot has happened since the beginning of this year, and where we left off last year. Was it this time last year? Time has been sort of skewed, I think, for most of us. So it's hard for me to remember, but I know we did a couple of seminars or a couple of videos last year about the cheeses, and we were able to, through 2020 and the pandemic and all the economic shutdowns that went on, we were able to tread water for a while and coast and slow production down and just try to streamline as much as possible. And we did that successfully. I'm so glad to say, to be able to report that the year ended up going all right for us. And by the end of 2020, the fourth quarter, we did okay for the holidays. And it certainly wasn't the typical year by a long shot, but we rode out the storm, and we are a seasonal dairy. Our cows milk from mid-February is when we start calving, and then we dry everybody off right before Christmas. So we had a quiet winter, and one thing that we did start doing over the winter, and actually we had been started back in the late summer of 2020, and so then we continued through the winter, is purchasing some milk from another dairy in the Sequatchie Valley that we work with as partner producer. And it's been a very, very beneficial thing for us to have an additional source of milk. It's really helped do a number of things for us, stabilize the cheese making schedule, create a little more consistency and predictability with the products that we can expect to have and when we would have them. We do maintain the farmstead cheeses seasonally, and we've added Walden, which is still currently the only cheese that we produce that is exclusively made with the purchased milk, or I should say, when we're purchasing the milk, we're exclusively using it for the Walden. And we're pasteurizing Walden. It's the only small format pasteurized cheese that we make currently, and we hope to expand on this line because we've found that it's been really taking off in popularity, and both in the retail sphere as well as the food service sphere. As that has started to come back this spring, we've seen just a really big response to Walden. So that's been very exciting. And so the good news about Walden is we can make that cheese year round, and we can buy more milk to increase production as our capacity allows us to do that. Where the farmstead cheeses, we will still continue to make the unpasteurized styles seasonally, and only using the milk that comes from our own herd of cows. So it's kind of a dual production model. And we envisioned this in 2019 and started to move in that direction in 2019 and the beginning of 2020. And then with the pandemic and everything just sort of coming to a halt very suddenly last spring, we put some of those plans on hold. And luckily, because of our raw milk aged farmstead cheeses that we make, we were able to put milk that we were producing ourselves into cheeses that age for quite some time. So we did not have to dump milk, and we did not have to throw any cheese away as a result of it, aging out in our facility because we couldn't sell it fast enough. So we're very lucky that we have options to either, sit on the cheese for a while, make it an aged product, or with the Walden, what has really become beneficial for our overall business model and what we were strategizing for in the first place we're really starting to reap the benefits of this year, with Walden being a quick turnaround, small format, and much more scalable style of cheese that is really helping cash flow, and the amount of cheese that we're able to fit in the facility, because we have this one that's moving out so much faster than the others. It's really creating a much more sustainable long-term economic model for us. And that's a huge improvement for us. We've really struggled ever since the beginning of our existence, really trying to come to terms with how to make farmstead cheese and do that successfully, which we've done as far as quality and the diversity of cheeses that we make, and maintaining, you know, really, really high quality products, but being able to have enough cheese year round to create the economic part of it is always really something that we've fallen short on. So Walden is really helping us answer that big question. And now, in the meantime, since the beginning of 2021, things were pretty quiet in January, and we were being very conservative about our production plans, as well as our plans to, hi, how are you? My son's here. Where was I? Oh, so at the beginning of 2021, January, things really quieted down after the holidays, which is to be expected. But we really weren't very sure what what was going to transpire this year in terms of how fast we were going to be able to, really ramp up production, where sales were, kind of calling for it. So we started production plans off to be very conservative and somewhat slow, and actually had planned on keeping our calves so that we could feed more of the milk to the calves, and keeping the bull calves, so we had more mouths to feed, and therefore wouldn't have the pressure of having to use all the milk for cheese making. But it was funny. It was really with the stroke of March 1st, I feel like that, very beginning of March, which was right in, within the first 2 weeks of our calving season, when the milk was just barely, starting to really trickle in. We just saw this uptick in sales that was phenomenal. And we had this one really big week, the first week of March, was just like, wow, well, yeah, okay, we have all this cheese that we made in 2020. And like I said, we didn't really waste any of it. Nothing aged out. We were able to maintain it. And, we sold a certain amount of it in 2020, but then we still had quite a bit of inventory. So we were able to just start moving all this cheese. And then the second week of March, third week of March, fourth week of March, it just kept coming. The orders were just coming in. And the month of April was the same. It just kept getting busier. And we've just seen, like, almost with the, now that we're almost at the end of May, 3 months in a row where I feel like it's another fourth quarter. It's like the best 3 months that we've had maybe ever. And so it was a really, really sudden shift. So now we're moving through the inventory that we made in 2020 quite quickly. And what I'm looking at ahead is that's not really worrisome, but it's really kind of, the thing that I'm always bracing myself for is when we're going to run out of cheese and not have anything to sell. So now I feel like the summer is going to be really slow, only because we're just not going to have that much inventory, since our 2021 production, the cheeses that we've just started making since late February, early March, really won't be ready until July, August, at the soonest. So we're going to have a gap this summer with certain cheeses that is sort of unusual. But it's, like I had mentioned before, we're seeing a lot of problems, but they're kind of good problems, because they're coming from this really big swell of business that we've been experiencing. And I'm just really glad that we made it through 2020 and had plenty of really high quality inventory to move out and really respond quickly to all these opportunities for sales that have come up. And then along with that is the huge explosion in popularity of Walden, the new pasteurized cheese. And I think that's sort of, two reasons for that. Not only the the swell of business, and I feel like, you know, our industry in general as a whole is feeling it. We're all, you know, having the same experience. But with 2020, the Walden was something that we sort of, it was like a soft launch for that cheese, where we had originally planned for a really, you know, a much bigger launch that would have, you know, taken a lot more energy and taken a lot more milk away from the other cheeses that we produce. And we slowed that way down, but it gave us time to introduce that new product to the full spectrum of our customer base, so that now we have nearly all of our big accounts are buying Walden, and they're, you know, they're aware of what it is. It, you know, it just gave us more time to really introduce the new cheese. And so I think overall that's now, you know, really benefiting us in our ability to just constantly have, you know, accounts that are looking to replenish their supply. So at this point, I'm taking pre-orders for that cheese all the way into the last week of June. So my inventory that we haven't even made yet is already sold. And then, you know, we'll start taking the reservations for the month of July. Probably by the end of this week, I'll be looking at what we're going to have in July. So we've never really had a cheese that, you know, we could plan for production based on sales that we already have lined up weeks before the cheese is even produced. So it's a really big change in the dynamic that I'm used to. And my role, I should say, at Sequatchie Cove, my husband and I co-own the business, and he is the production manager, you know, oversees everything that has to do with production. I oversee everything that has to do with sales and keeping up with, you know, what is for sale, what inventory is coming, you know, down the pipe, what, you know, if we're going to be out of something or we're going to have a glut of something, you know, I'm keeping up with that and making sure that we're selling everything in a timely manner and communicating with all of our customers. So I'm having to pivot a little bit, but I'm really happy to do it because we're just seeing such a great change in the atmosphere in the industry that we're in. So it's a really welcome change, and just really weren't planning for that to happen so quickly. And now, you know, going on 3 months of just solid, just overwhelming sales numbers. So currently we're pretty much at peak production with our farmstead cheese. We really need more cows. We shrunk the herd at the end of 2019, which was another reason, you know, trying to go seasonal and move in a new direction, and then start buying some milk to supplement. But we were trying to create a much more efficient and economical dairy milk production model. So for that reason, prior to the pandemic or any awareness that there would be such a thing, we sold a group of our cows. So we had already had fewer mouths to feed over the winter and less milk, knowing that we were going to have less milk production going into 2020. So that was another thing that just, you know, sort of worked out and really helped save us, and so that we could just, you know, kind of coast and stay in production and stay in business throughout the whole year last year. So now that we're seeing this big swell in demand, and I'm not sure if it's going to continue, but, you know, the people out there that I'm talking to are really confident that, you know, we're not going to see any really slowing down for the rest of this year. So we're going to go ahead and start buying milk sooner than we had predicted that we would need to, so that we can continue to increase our Walden production and Walden availability. And now I'm really thinking, you know, how can we need to acquire some more equipment so that we can make bigger batches, so we can really plan for the third and fourth quarter to really just max it out. And so in the meantime, we're trying to supplement our milk supply for Walden with the purchased milk, so that we can use the farmstead milk for the other cheeses. And the other cheeses I'm talking about, I have a nice little cutting board here with a few of them. These are sort of my classic cheeses that we've been making for years now. We have the Cumberland. This was our first cheese, our Tome. and the Coppinger back here. This has definitely become one of the most popular cheeses that we make. And then the Dancing Fern, this is our first batch of 2021, and it's ready just in time for this week. Really excited about what the plans that we have for Dancing Fern. Now that Walden's in the picture, we've changed a little bit about that, so I'll talk about that as well. And then I have the Shakerag Blue, another most popular cheese that we make. So we're trying to really maximize, maximize the milk supply that we are able to put into those particular cheeses, being the unpasteurized, farmstead milk only, seasonal production cheeses that we've always made. And, you know, our customers are just asking for more and more and more of those. So we, you know, we're just trying to figure out ways to grow and add to our milk supply, and, you know, and really respond as quickly as we can to, you know, this big shift in the landscape, with specialty cheese and food service and, you know, gourmet specialty shops, and just, you know, the whole spectrum. I feel like everybody's experiencing it, and so it's really exciting. So we are, you know, we're trying to make every one of our cheeses at least every other week, and so we try to make at least 3 to 4 batches of Cumberland every month, 3 to 4 batches of Coppinger every month, 2 batches of Dancing Fern a month, and at least 4 batches of Shakerag a month. And it's just becoming a little bit hard based on the milk supply that we have in order to keep that frequency up. But that's our goal. And so just to circle back, since I've talked a lot about Walden, and I don't have a Walden here with me today because we're just totally sold out of it. And but I was really glad I could just hold on to a wheel of Dancing Fern to have this to talk about a little bit. So the Walden, the idea behind the Walden really is to create a similar style to the Dancing Fern, which is based on the French Alpine cheese. That's a fairly famous cheese known as Reblochon, and the authentic raw milk French Reblochon is no longer available in the US, and that's been the case for many years now. So there hasn't really been, domestically speaking, a cheese that fits that same niche in the marketplace. And we, back in the early days of Nathan's trips, doing research about cheeses and trying to figure out what styles that we were going to make and what he was truly inspired by, he ran across some of this cheese when he was in France, and he was lucky enough to visit a couple of the producers in the Savoie region of France, and it really just stuck with him. This, you know, became one of the foundational goals of Sequatchie Cove Creamery, was to make a Reblochon style cheese, because we realized that there was a big sort of lack of that in our domestic market here in the US. So we set out to do that, and we did. And we've won more awards for the Dancing Fern than any other cheese. It's definitely one of the sort of most well-known cheeses, you know, as far as our brand. I think back in the early days, more people had heard of the name Dancing Fern than Sequatchie Cove Creamery. And so it really put us on the map. However, it's a very meticulous cheese. It's extremely problematic, and it can also have shelf life issues because it's a raw milk cheese. Being in the United States, it's got to be aged 60 days minimum before it can leave the facility. And so we've figured out how to do that. We figured out how to, you know, get it to that age, but try to maintain its maturity, its, you know, its state of ripeness as young as possible to, you know, maximize the shelf life that it can have. But being, it's a smaller format, but it's about a 20-ounce wheel. It's about this large, and versus the Walden is 7 ounces, so about a third of the size. So in, say, in a retail case, in a larger retail setting, the Dancing Fern would need to be cut and wrapped, you know, cut down into smaller pieces to be more of a retail size. And for that reason, it's a struggle to maintain the freshness. We've just, you know, really kind of had some issues in the case with cheese going downhill and aging out before they could sell it fast enough. And that's the main reason why I think a lot of the bigger retailers started to shy away from dancing fern, despite the popularity of it and sort of that, perfect niche that it fills in their case. Perishability is just an issue with it, and also just having to handle it to cut it down into that smaller format for sale. So we decided we needed to come up with a small format Reblochon style cheese that would be retail ready. So the 7-ounce size Walden, that idea was born. And what we started doing really was just when we'd make a batch of dancing fern, we had a certain number of small 7-ounce molds. So we would just make some really small size dancing ferns and sort of experimented with that and aging it out and, taste testing it at, week 1, week 2, week 3, and so on. And, we started to hit on something that we were really happy with. And so this would be around mid or late 2019. So we decided we would set out to really make a commitment, invest in a pasteurizer, which is a very expensive piece of equipment that we hadn't taken that on and gone in debt for another piece of equipment. But we realized that this small format cheese was going to sort of be the answer to a lot of the problems that we were currently experiencing, and also serve as a similar enough style that the demand and the interest in that cheese would sort of piggyback on the popularity and sort of the established awareness of dancing fern. So so that's where the idea for Walden came from, and it seems to be working pretty well. But we are taking our dancing fern production and changing it a little, because now that we have Walden and it's much more widely available and consistently available year round, we really want to dial in and get back to the most pure form of the raw milk Reblochon production that how we understand, it should be made, and for the quality of the cheese to really shine through and be the most optimum that it can be. So we are taking the production level down on dancing fern. Now that we aren't having to sort of rely on that cheese or lean on that cheese so much, take the pressure off of it a little bit, make smaller batches. And the big difference in the production is that those batches will just be made with morning milk. So the milk will not be cooled down. It will just go straight from the cows into the vat. And that's the really big secret that I've learned over the years. And I think Nathan now really thoroughly understands about Reblochon production. The most traditional, production of that cheese in France is that it's only made with morning milk. You don't cool down that milk. And the difference that it makes is phenomenal. We started just experimenting with, doing that and only that style of dancing fern production by the end of 2020. And the finished product is it's just like the best version of itself that you can possibly have. And it all has to do with, cooling down the milk and how that will select for certain spoilage organisms that will cause issues on the rind, off odors, deterioration, and just general lower quality with this particular style of cheese. But if you don't cool down the milk and you just use the milk straight from the udder right to the vat, you don't select for those same spoilage organisms. So dancing fern is now going to be made in smaller batches, and generally will just be less available. But with the addition of Walden, I don't think that we're really going to have too much of a blip on the radar as far as, just not being able to satisfy the customers who are looking for that style. So I'm really excited about what we're going to have to offer this year and the quality that we're going to see with the dancing fern, that I think we've just had sort of a frustrating experience over the years, just trying to get that cheese right, but trying to make too much of it all at once, and the certain things that we've had to do in order to make more dancing fern, really compromising the quality in the end. So that's my long story about Dancing Fern and Walden. And in terms of the other cheeses, I mentioned Shakerag. This, oh, whoops, it just broke. But now you can really see the fig leaf that's wrapped on the wheels, so it peels right off when you cut it into wedges. It comes right off, but the leaves are actually edible. And I kind of like nibbling on one a little bit, but for the most part, I think people remove them. But the Shakerags are most popular cheese, and therefore one of the most important products that we produce. We have, there's good things and bad things about this cheese because the blue cheese ages very slowly in cold temperature for the majority of its aging period. The Shakerag is actually waxed and then aged in a very cold temperature after its first couple of weeks. So it goes from the K, which is around 50 degrees, 51 degrees, into a room that's more like 40 degrees or between 35 and 40, so that we can really slow down the progress of that cheese's ripening. And I think that really adds a lot more subtlety to the blue cheese flavor, keeps it from getting too ripe too quickly and, getting ammoniated and things like that, which happen more quickly in a warmer temperature. We're also able to hold the cheese for a long time without any risk of it aging out or going, over the hill. But the big limiting factor with the Shakerag is our availability of the fresh fig leaves. So we just last week ran out of our supply of fig leaves, which was the supply of leaves that I actually harvest the prior year. So last year's leaves we harvest, we steam them, which actually sort of sterilizes the leaf and softens it. And then we submerge all the leaves in buckets of Chattanooga whiskey, and they're preserved in the whiskey for, as long as we need them to be. They also stay in the refrigerator. So we have buckets and buckets of preserved leaves that are soaking in whiskey over the course of, at least 6 months or longer, depending on how fast we move through those leaves. So we just ran out of last year's leaves. And so that's really kind of our, a bottleneck for Shakerag. Once we don't have any leaves, we're continuing to make the cheese. It's aging. It's just going to be sitting longer in the wax. But in the meantime, the sales are going to be interrupted. Our availability is going to be interrupted. And it's normally around the 1st of June, or definitely by like mid to late June, where I really start ramping up my fig leaf harvest. And I have a whole network of fig tree owners. I have 40 trees myself, but they're all very young. So I still really rely on my Chattanooga area fig leaf growers network that I've developed over the years, to go, on their property. Some of them harvest the leaves for me, but most of them just allow me to go harvest them myself. So, and that's my job. That is one of the only components that's really production oriented that I play an active role in, is getting those fig leaves and getting them while they're fresh and in really nice condition, and processing them and getting them into the whiskey as quickly as possible. This spring, however, in the month of April, at the very beginning of the month and again at the very end of April, we had 2 really hard freezes, and that has set the trees back in our whole region by quite a bit. I feel like the leaves on the trees, the buds were breaking, they were coming out, they got zapped by that first frost. It wasn't that big of a deal because it was still pretty early at that point. Then it happened again at the end of April. By that point, we'd had several 80-degree days over the course of the month of April. There was a lot of leaf growth present by the end of the month. Then that got zapped by the freeze, and that was a really bad, damaging event for fig trees in our area. Fig trees really won't be killed by something like that, but they'll just be set back. So now the trees are just literally having to regenerate. New buds are breaking. It's just going to take time, at least I would say a month longer than usual, for the leaves to develop to the place where, I would normally be wanting to harvest them. So I'm looking at a pretty big setback with the timing of how fast I'll be able to accumulate enough leaves, soak them in the whiskey, and then start getting them on the cheeses. Usually I'm really like on time for the new cheese, the new Shakerags of the year to be starting to be ready like around the beginning of August. And now I'm hoping that it'll be the beginning of September at best. So that's just to create a little bit bigger gap for us between when we run out of the Shakerag that we currently have in inventory, and it's disappearing fast, and then, you know, having new cheese available again. So this summer, we're just going to have some gaps that are inevitable. We're also going to run out of Cumberland for a little while. That rarely happens. Cumberland being sort of the workhorse of our lineup. You know, we can always put milk into Cumberland. It's a simple make. It's generally less labor intensive in the aging room. It's something that we can age out for quite some time, you know, 6-7 months, and the cheese is still in excellent shape. I really have gotten to where now I really prefer Cumberland that's very aged versus where we, you know, the minimum would be about 90 days, and then we'll take it all the way to 6 or 7 months if we need to. And it really is just better the more time it has. So being able to give our new production enough time to really mature, to be the best quality that it can be, there's just going to be some time there that we just won't have any cheese available. And it's just, you know, every year's different. I feel like production wise, you know, with our seasonal production being farmstead, we have environmental variations, we have animal health variations, we have, you know, milk quality variations, things that are just always a given. But the way it shakes out and the way, you know, our finished product is affected by that, and the availability is affected by that, seems to be, you know, something that we can never quite predict from one year to the next, because we just never really have the same year twice. And that's agriculture and that's farming. And so farmstead cheesemaking is just subject to many of those same variables that are out of our control. And so that's that just is kind of the year that I'm now can see, you know, out in front of me. But I am very confident that we will be able to really have plenty of availability by the fourth quarter, and that's seasonal wise. As far as sales go, that's the most important time of year to really have as much cheese available as possible. So it's, you know, new year, new problems. We're always just trying to do better and get smarter and anticipate things before they're upon us. But, you know, with the case with the Shakerag fig leaf thing that I've got going on, you know, there was just no way for us to foresee that, you know, we would have such an interruption in our ability to produce it. So in the meantime, we're going to have some other blue cheeses. We'll have the Bellamy blue and a small amount of the Fredonia, which I don't have either one of those at this moment because they're out of stock, but we have new batches aging and they'll be ready in July, about the time that I probably run out of Shakerag. So it'll all balance out. It's, you know, we'll just do the best we can with what we have to work with. And in the meantime, you know, just pay attention to our milk quality, do the best we can with the production, and then bring in the milk that we can for making Walden, so we can have the most Walden and the most other farmstead cheeses for the holidays, and hopefully a little bit before that as well. The Coppinger, this cheese with the ash line, I said before, this one's become quite popular, really our number 2 cheese as far as production and sales goes. This one we're actually sitting on quite a bit of inventory, so it is one that I don't foresee running out of as quickly this summer, which is great because we do have such a good following on this. And it is a little bit of background on this cheese. We used to make a cheese called Coppinger that was a little bit different. It was more of a Swiss Alpine influence style. The new Coppinger, which we developed this style in 2015, so it's been like this now for a while, but is more going in the direction of a French Alpine washed rind style. But it's a fairly firm cheese. I'm sitting out here where it's really warm and it's getting kind of sweaty and, you know, kind of soft. But in general, this is a pretty firm, pretty dry cheese as far as washed rind styles go. And we layer it with that black vegetable ash for two reasons. Really just because it's beautiful and it really is eye-catching, and I think that's part of the popularity of it. And it's also a nod to the traditional cheeses such as Morbier. Another one that I don't think is very highly available, if at all, in the United States. But Morbier was traditionally made with that ash line for more of a preservation technique. Nowadays, the ash line has a lot to do with cosmetic and appearance, but we just really like the story of the way that vegetable ash used to be used as a preservative to preserve the curd of the morning cheese make, so that the cheesemaker could come in the evening and use the second milking of the day to press that curd right on top of the ash and make one wheel out of the two morning and evening milkings, and with the ash dividing the two. And so that's kind of how that style came about and how that look came about. And factor that really kind of works in our favor, I think, with the Coppinger and helps set it apart as far as the ash goes. That vegetable ash is a pH neutralizer. So it raises the pH of the curd and sort of keeps the acidity from getting too strong on the Coppinger, which gives it a much more unique flavor. The Cumberland and the Coppinger are made with the same forms. They're the same size wheel. They're otherwise, you know, visually can be easy to mistake from each other. If you're just looking at two wheels wrapped side by side, especially if they're wrapped, they're really hard to tell apart. But they, flavor wise, they're very, very different. The Cumberland, you have a lot more acidity. It's not really cheddar like, but it gives you that pucker kind of back here, you know, like a sharp cheddar. But that is a very kind of prominent component of the flavor profile of Cumberland, is that acidity. And I think that's something that a lot of folks really respond to when they're looking for that kind of sharp cheese flavor. With the Coppinger, you have a much softer finish. You don't have that acidity. And I think that gives the Coppinger an overall, like, it's a savory and sort of a meaty flavor profile, but not the acidity. The lack of acidity just really brings out other qualities in the milk that I think the acidity in the Cumberland mask a little bit. So the pH of the curd being a little bit buffered by that ash, I think really does give it a unique quality beyond just visually. So that's something that I just like to explain, especially at the farmer's market, you know, when folks, and a lot of people look at that, they see that black line and they think, oh, it's got blue in it. But it is not blue. It's quite the opposite. It's, you know, something that is mellowing the flavor of the cheese and not adding, you know, extra bite to the finished product. So the other couple cheeses that I don't have here that we make, again, farmstead, strictly with our own milk and unpasteurized. I mentioned the Bellamy Blue. That cheese is a cave-aged blue. We rub the rind with smoked sea salt, and then we age that in the same cave with the Cumberland. They both have that natural rind. It's very similar in appearance. Kind of hard to see out here with this bright sun, but it's a mottled, sort of fuzzy white and gray, beautiful natural rind. Bellamy has a very similar quality to it, but just under the rind, it's been rubbed couple times with the smoked sea salt. So it gives it a very nice hint, but not overly smoky flavor. And it's so creamy, so buttery, very dense. You can crumble it as long as it's very cold, but if it sits out and comes to room temperature, it's much more of like a spreadable consistency. It really melts in your mouth like butter. And so it's great. It's one of our most popular cheeses again, but it doesn't quite have the status of popularity as the Shakerag Blue. But I'm excited about that one coming back. I just didn't quite have any ready to share today. And then the other cheese that we make seasonally, that I believe I've talked about with you before, is the Grootly. And it's a larger format cheese, like a 25-pound wheel. They're about this large. And they're aged the better part of a year, at least 8 months. I think what we're now cutting into, the current batch that we're selling, is pretty much a whole year old. And it can, actually go quite, ways past that, maybe 2 years. We tend to not sit on the cheese that long, but we have been working with Counter Cheese Caves in Charleston, South Carolina, and they buy whole wheels from us and then age them out. So they have this like extra aged Grootly, and they have a really nice aging room, and I think they do an excellent job. Just maturing cheeses, so it's really fun to be able to sample some of their extra aged Grootly after they've been sitting on something that, when we sold it to them, it was maybe 6 months old, and then it's a whole year and a half by the time that they sell it. So so I'm really excited about the Grootly as well, because that cheese being such a long aging period over the years, it's we have not really put a whole lot of milk into that cheese. We've maintained a very limited production because of the long learning curve and sort of just being able to understand the cheese that we produce this year, we really won't taste for so many months down the road. So it's taken us a really long time to get to where we feel very confident that putting milk into that cheese is going to yield, a really high quality finished product. So we're making more Grootly this year than ever before. And we've steadily been increasing the Grootly, I think, since like 2018, after we renovated our aging room, improved our climate control system. That also really helped give us the tools that we need in order to mature cheese for a really long time like that. So so we'll have some Gruetli, we'll have some Bellamy this summer. We'll be steadily making Walden every week. And then by the beginning of the fall, hopefully September, the Shakerag will be back, the Cumberland will be back. And we'll be really up and running for the second half of 2021. So I think that's basically all the cheeses that we're currently producing.
Very interesting that when we started and we were talking about this, we were like, well, do you have some questions? You did a beautiful job of taking us through the year and all the things and all the challenges and everything. That was wonderful. That is exactly what everybody's been asking about, is like, okay, so how's the year been? And people are like, okay, well, you were very explicit about it, and that was really great to hear how better things are getting for you, and I'm very happy to hear that.
We're we just really weren't expecting such a quick acceleration of everything. So it's great. It's just now I just need more. We just need more milk. We just need more capacity. We just need to continue fine tuning the production so that we can, rise to the occasion with the market. So.
So do you guys work 7 days a week?
In the past, we've always hit a point where we have to make cheese 7 days a week. But at the end of that was another thing with the pasteurizer. The other thing that came along at the end of 2019 was a bigger bulk tank. And that one, once we did that, we were like, why didn't we do this like years ago, because the bulk tank was really our bottleneck, where we still had room in the vat. We could make a bigger batch. We couldn't hold any more milk, so we would have to make a batch of cheese every day. So now that we have a bigger bulk tank, we are able to keep the production days to 5 days a week. And I think if we really want to push the Walden and say add an extra batch or bring in extra milk for that cheese in particular, that could push us to a 6th cheese make day, at least for a few months this year, while the farmstead cheese is also in peak production. But I don't think we'll go beyond that. And I'm pretty confident that we'll probably be able to keep it with 5 days a week and still have 2 days off. And, there's so much activity. I mean, cheese making is very demanding, and somebody's got to be there to do that. And it's very labor intensive. But I think what's even more labor intensive and consistently labor intensive, no matter, how many days a week we're making cheese, is what's going on in the aging room. And so, with the washing of the cheeses, so we have the Grootly, the Coppinger, the Dancing Fern, and the Walden are all wash rind cheeses, and need attention nearly every day. The Gruetli not as many days, not as frequently, because it's such a large wheel. But the smaller the wheel gets, the more frequently they have to be washed and maintained. So there's a lot of room, a lot of work in the aging room. And so, we're trying to balance the cheese making days so that we can have enough bandwidth with our very limited staff to, give the attention in the aging room that, that the cheeses need. Because if we invest all this into these cheeses and then we don't take good care of them in the aging room, we're just really, it's just kind of a moot point of, putting all this work into it if we can't really follow through and, create the best finished product that we could possibly have. So that's been a really big challenge over the years, is, handling all the milk, making cheese every day, and keeping up with everything in the aging room. And, then there's obviously facility maintenance, sanitation, all these weeklies, all the things we got to do in order to maintain a food processing facility, and, our third-party audit, and all the, expectations that go along with food production and facility maintenance. So, and we are a staff of, we have 4 full-time people in the creamery, making cheese. And we have 4 full-time, 3 full-time people and 1 part-time person on the farm on the milk production side of things. So, and that, milk production is another really labor-intensive part. Since we have our own herd, we're producing our own milk. We milk twice a day, 7 days a week, from the day 1 of calving, beginning in February, all the way through to right before Christmas. So there's kind of twofold production model. So milk production is really intense and expensive, and then cheese production is just as equally intense and expensive. So farmstead cheese making is so challenging and so full of variables that are often outside of our control, whether it's on the farm side or in the cheese side, that there's just a good reason why there's very few of us doing this. Very good reason why. So now not all of our cheeses are farmstead, but we are very dedicated to the purity of the farmstead cheese, and then also dedicated to the longevity of our business, our ability to keep our employees paid year round, and create a sustainable model, economically speaking. And so I feel like we're getting there. We've addressed so many of our problems and are starting to really see the results and the better outcomes from the measures that we've taken, whether it be equipment or, just doing things differently with the milk production seasonally, buying in a certain amount of milk, and just understanding our product from milk quality all the way through to the finished cheese product. And it's taken us, we've been in business now 11 years. So, yeah, over a decade before I feel like we've really kind of come around, turned a corner on a lot of levels. So, but we made it through the pandemic. We're seeing a lot of really good results, on the work that we've been doing. Oh, the other thing that we've been working on for years, and we really see, I think, on the milk production side, is the breeding of our animals. We have a very specific, specialized sort of mixed herd that is made up of a lot of breeds of animals that we've chosen because of different kind of components and qualities that each one brings. We started off with mainly a Jersey herd, and we started breeding some with New Zealand, as well as European breeds like Frisian and Montbéliard. And so we have this animal now, and also, just to back up and say, when we sold part of our herd at the end of 2019, what we sold was the fall calving group, which happened to be just animals that we had purchased from another farm. What we ended up with after we sold that group was a herd of animals that almost exclusively had been born on our farm and came from our own very deliberate breeding efforts. So we've arrived at this herd now that is very unique, very specific to our needs, born on our farm, and the animal health and the milk quality and the manageability, and I think the conversion from grass to milk is better than ever. We're just seeing a lot of results from breeding efforts that have taken at least more than half of our existence. Now we've been working on these breeding efforts, and now that we've arrived at this herd of animals that we really created for our own purposes, we're seeing many benefits from that. So, but it's just a long game, this dairy thing, from trying to work with animals and understand milk quality, and then the long game of understanding cheese and cheese quality and aging cheese. And there's just never a lack of new challenges and new places to get better and to dial it in. So and we have a very dedicated staff, people that have been with us for a number of years. We also have some really new, excited, very enthusiastic folks that have joined us more recently. But I'm very glad to say that some of the team members that we've had for a while, they are so dedicated and just so in tune with what we're doing, that has a whole lot to do with how we've been able to come so far. So it's great.
Wow.
I love it. Most of the time.
Well, we talked earlier this year, and it was like, well, we're in the middle of some calving, so I'll get back to you. And so I'm
Yeah.
glad that things have picked up that way, and there's
Yeah.
more things coming your way. Good. So I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear that.
Good. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. It's fun to talk about it and try to like recap and think of everything that's happened. And it's a lot. It's a long story, and we're just gonna hopefully continue to have more to tell. And so yeah.
Well, good. Well, I certainly appreciate you taking the time to bring us up to speed from last year and talk about some of the cheeses and the changes that you have. That's excellent. I can't wait till we actually have a full line that we can sample together.
Yeah, well, right. I'll keep you posted, and sorry about your the terrible shipping. I don't know what happened with UPS, but whenever it does arrive, let me know what kind of shape it's in. But I'd like to have another chance to share some cheeses with you, and possibly, September I'll be able to offer the full line, all
All
8.
right.
So
All right. We'll walk through each one. All right.
yeah,
Together.
yeah, I
Okay.
look forward
That
to it.
sounds great. So Padgett, again, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Great cheeses. And I look forward to seeing you in the near future and hopefully in September.
Okay. Yeah, same here. Thanks, Michael. I
All
greatly
right.
appreciate it. Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.